Hello, my lovely little Titans. I know I'm about an hour early, but I was just feeling into it, so I thought I'd jump in and just get started. I hope you guys had a good week. I had a pretty good week. Hope everybody's having a good holiday season, no matter what you celebrate. Sorry, I'm adjusting some things on my TV right now. Sorry about that. I'll see if anybody pops in. Oh, hello, Samuel. How are you doing? Not too bad, not too bad. My daughter's well. Thank you for asking. Pretty much just what I usually do, just chilling. Didn't really have a huge plan, just wanted to hang out and chat with people. See what everybody's been up to. Yeah, I don't know if that's still a thing anymore. I've seen like some people still use it, but it's mostly to make, ironically, YouTube videos. Hello. Hello. Hello, everybody in chat. How are you guys doing? Not too bad. Hello. Cosplay. Gotta move these, they make too much noise. Of course. Yeah. That's all right, Cheyenne. I do YouTube shorts, I do live streams, and I do long form videos. And saying, how have you not known that I do YouTube shorts? You've been subscribed for enough time. I have one that releases every Thursday right now. I thought I had it set up for notification. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't notify anybody. That's possible, I'm sure. It is YouTube after all. Cinematography. Very cool. That's awesome. Just watch the stream. Oh, fair enough. Of course. Thank you, Brian. Pure Star Wars OC sketch. Nice. That would be cool. I decided having more than one YouTube channel was too much to juggle, so I just put all my crazy ideas into one channel. That's why it's kind of like an amalgamation of theory videos, skits, and other things. I just couldn't handle the idea of doing more than one YouTube, keeping it all straight and up on a regular schedule. So I'm just like, I'll have one, and then I'll just put everything on here. And, as long as I have like a kind of underlying theme, it should be fine. Trying to figure out what that emoji was. Yeah, that's kind of funny. Have y'all been enjoying the holiday season? If you enjoy it at all. If you don't enjoy it, then I understand. Hello, Mr. Penguin. Not shouting, sweetie. Sorry. As long as it's a holiday, I always enjoy it. Nice. I spent today helping my mom. Well, I say helping. I ended up doing most of it. Um, we usually, do like Christmas baking and stuff. I ended up doing most of the dough prep, so I made all the cookie dough and some of the candy as well. So that was fun. She ended up not feeling too well after we got started, which I don't blame her. I mean, none of us have really felt well in the last couple weeks. So she got some stuff started, and I just took over for her and finished it, and it was really cool. And I think everything turned out pretty well. We'll see how it all pans out. So, croissant. This is just Southern California. Southern California. There's like fairs, Imperial. Stay away from everything Imperial, but on croissant. Okay. Interesting. I would have thought somebody would do that on Naboo or something more calm, but croissant works too. Hope all goes well. Thank you. I know I'm not critiquing it anyway, Cheyenne. I'm just, expressing my thoughts on things. It sounds really cool. It sounds really cute. Sounds like it could be a really adorable skit series, honestly. Just I would think if you're a Jedi trying to lay low, Coruscant might not be the best place. Mm. I mean, that's the cool part about Star Wars. You could just make something up for yourself. Doesn't have to necessarily be canon, but I understand. I mean, I was writing a now deleted, uh, Force Awakens fan fiction, and a friend of mine and I, because we were trying to find out, like, why Rey's name was Rey, and I was just coming up with I was just pulling shit out of thin air, and we found on some remote planet a tree. It was called an arbor ray, and I'm just like, "Oh, well, we're just gonna come up with some random backstory for this for why this tree is why what Ray's name came from." And it's like, it's a cool idea, but you just pull the randomest of shit when you're trying to do like anything fan wise. You just pull random stuff out of nowhere. You just make it up. It doesn't actually make any sense. It doesn't have to, so long as it reads well and follows follows something minuscule. It's fine. That's fair. I personally think writing my Star Wars fic was actually the hardest one I ever wrote. Um, because there's so much that goes into it, and I was just like, I understood why Lucas had a hard time keeping everything to movies, and why the series Clone Wars worked so much better because you get all of the intricacies of the politics, and you get the war aspects and the tactics and everything there. Like, it all made more sense in a series versus a movie. So yeah, it was um, it's a very complicated fic I wrote, and I still felt like I dumbed it down too much. Lightsaber is still my favorite fictional one. You know, I, I really do like lightsabers. I think I would love to learn how to use one, even if it's just, not a real lightsaber, even though, the nerds are trying to figure that out. I've seen it. I've seen videos of that, people trying to come up with real plasma laser swords to be real lightsabers. That'll be pretty awesome if they are ever able to succeed, but we shall see. I would definitely use one. I would definitely learn to use one now, even if it's not real. I've got a model one. Thank you. Right under the Empire's nose. Fair enough. Your fishing line and point sneaking. I think that's how they did it in the movie. Or they just had somebody throw something and then they reversed the footage to make it look like it was coming to the person. That may have been part of it too. Well, I say that may have been the later movies. The early movies, it probably was fishing wire in some moments, like the one that Luke fights, the training module. Um, but I think in the later films, they did the reverse thing where somebody just threw something and then they reversed it to make it look like it was coming into their hand. I think that's what they did. Hacksmith was closest. I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever get a true lightsaber like what we see in Star Wars in our time, but I think if people put enough thought and um, process into blueprints and stuff, we may see one in another 100 years, which would be pretty awesome. Lightsaber in 100 years. That sounds achievable. I mean, back in the 1970s, they didn't even think laser swords could be a thing, and now look at us. We've got a prototype. It only took, depending on who you are, about 40, 50 years. So that's pretty good. I'd say a full blown lightsaber in 100 years is pretty reasonable. Again, I would personally love to use one, but I'll just stick to maybe just playing with my model one, at least for now. If we get real ones, then maybe. I wonder if they'll come up with laser guns, guns that fire laser beams. I wonder if that would be achievable. Because I mean, you see those in a lot of sci-fi movies. I think it's just to get around censors about guns and stuff, but you never know. Absolutely, I'm more than happy to be proven wrong by people. I love it. Um, makes for a compelling conversation, but we'll see. I'd say there are enough determined people. It would be possible. Maybe again, maybe not in our lifetime, but maybe in 100 years. That's how politics are going. Laser swords are such a good idea. Well, you know those things would be heavily regulated. Power hungry Palpatine. Mm. They would say Palpatine kind of embodied a lot of politicians that we currently have. I'm not going to name any names. I don't want anybody naming any names in chat. Just know that he embodies a lot of politicians, not just one specific one, but a lot of them. I feel we need more politicians like Bail Organa and Padme Amidala and Mon Mothma, I can't remember her last name, like Mon Mothma, Monthra, something like that. Can't remember. But more politicians like them. You know, the ones that were actually going for peace. Peace and liberty and all that good stuff. I'd also like to point out how devastating and tragic it is to watch Clone Wars, the series. Not just because you know the fates of everybody in the show already, and I'm sure I've said this before, I enjoy talking about this subject, but it's just so frustrating to know that both sides are being played by the exact same person. That they are all being played by Palpatine. The Separatists are being played by Palpatine through Dooku. Dooku's trying to show that, like, lead the Separatists and say, oh, you should break free of the Republic. It's corrupt, which was true. That was very true. But, you know, Dooku was part of it, part of the corruption. And then you have Palpatine, who was on the Senate, acting as Chancellor and all that. And then who's getting the Jedi, and it's just so frustrating. You want them to be played by the same person on both sides, so we were needlessly losing so many lives. Did you watch the Rebel series? No, I did not. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I saw the Ahsoka arc, which I thought was pretty awesome, but I didn't really watch the rest of it. I wasn't super interested. And no, I have not watched the Ahsoka series. I have not watched any of the new live action Star Wars series. I don't know. I feel like it's like Marvel, it's just kind of been done too much. There's just too much out there. I'm more than content with just keeping with what I've got, what we've had. We didn't need to add a new thing every year. I know they're trying to match the initial success of The Mandalorian, but they're kind of missing what made The Mandalorian good, and now they're overcomplicating things, which they have a tendency to do because they're trying to tie in everything that happens, I guess, in those series that take place between episode 6 and episode 7. They're trying to like make everything line up. It's just like you can't do that because it just doesn't. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't feel natural, and it's too much. There's just too much going on. They're falling into the same trap Lucas fell into. It's just too much. They started off with a good story with Mandalorian initially, and then they just made it overcomplicated. Which, with Star Wars, it's easy to do. There's just so much. There's so much in the IP. But they should have just kind of, I guess, taken and kind of a hint or a leaf out of Clone Wars book, because they did a lot, but they managed to tie it all together. You didn't When you watched an episode that didn't have like Anakin or Obi-Wan or Ahsoka or Padme in it, you still felt like you weren't missing anything vital. You felt like you were just getting another extension of the story. You felt like you were learning more, and then you would go back to the main cast, and things would tie in, and it would make sense. But and again, they were telling multiple stories, but they managed to tie it all together with the same theme. There's no same theme running through Mandalorian and the other shows. It's just they're like, oh, this sounds cool. Let's tell this story. Oh, this sounds cool. Let's tell that story. And then maybe try to make them fit later on. No, you have to agree on one theme. That's the thing with Star Wars. There has to be a theme. And yes, you can have multiple branches, but it has to tie back into the original theme. If you're going to have multiple different things going on, but no unifying theme, it's not going to work. It really isn't. That's actually why Rebels can work too, because it's branching off of what Clone Wars started. So there's still an underlying theme with it. Even though it tells multiple stories from multiple points of view, we still have the same running theme. That's why, um, like again, some of the other shows just don't work as well, because yes, they might be loosely tied to the others, like they might make a reference about something going on in this corner of the galaxy or whatever, but it's not the same thing as it all being a unified theme. It's not the same thing as everything happening at the same time, but because of the same reason or going back to the same reason. It's Everybody wanted to make their own story, and then they're like, oh crap, we have to make this fit somehow into this timeline or into this um, story that we have, but now it doesn't really fit. So now we're just going to kind of like jank it in there, and ugh, nothing worse than janky writing, which is why so many of these Star Wars spin-offs have failed. Is just the janky, clanky writing. There's nothing, like I said, there's no common theme to tie it all together to give them all something to come back and circle back to. It's ridiculous. And they think they can just, the next great idea is gonna make it work. It's not. It's really not. Oh, cool. That's awesome. I have one Star Wars figure is Jyn Erso. That is probably my favorite Star Wars movie is Rogue One. It I don't know what it was about that movie, but it told. I've rewatched that one multiple times. I think I even saw it in theaters 2 or 3 times, and I almost never do that. But I saw that movie. I loved it, and it told a whole complete story. It showed that Star Wars can tell a complete story, beginning to end, and still give you backstory, which they love to do. Still give you world building details, which it loves to do, and still give you characters that you care about, even though you don't have much, like, you don't know a whole lot about the backstory. It's like you don't need a lot of backstory to love a character. We don't know everything about Han Solo. We didn't know everything about or anything about Han Solo in the original. We just knew he hung out in a bar. He shot Greedo, and Luke and Obi-Wan hired him, and that was it. That's all we knew. And that he liked to talk a big game. That's all we knew. We didn't need to know anything else. By the end of it, we kind of learned, he's a smuggler, he's got some shit going on, all this. But we didn't learn that until later on. It unfolded naturally. Some of this stuff, it's like they're trying to shove so much in, and you have to care about the character in such a quick time, and here's their backstory, and here's their tragic turning point, and all this. It's like, no, let it unfold naturally. I mean, when we meet Jyn, she's in prison. How did she get there? Well, we don't know yet, but we're with her here. So, we kind of go through, and then she gets saved by the rebels. Why? Because who her father is. Somebody she didn't want to be around. Okay. So then we learn a little bit more backstory. That's great. That unfolded naturally. Um, and Andor Cassian, I didn't need to know much about him other than he got a mouthy fucking robot, and that was fine with me. I didn't care much about him, but he was cool. And then you had the two Jedi well, you had the blind Jedi Master in the temple and his bodyguard, who's his best friend. They were awesome. I wanted to know more about them just because, you know, they were cool, and we hadn't heard much about the more peaceful side of the Jedi, I guess. With him, with I can't remember his name for the life of me, but with that gentleman who, he used the Force to see, kind of like how Toph used um, earthbending to navigate the world around her. I we That would have been cool to learn about. That would have been a lot more cool to learn about than Cassian. No offense to Cassian, but the 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 Jedi the Jedi monk was a lot cooler, and his buddy with the giant gun was cooler too. I was devastated losing those. Let me put the pilot um, that they dealt with was, I didn't need to know about the pilot. I didn't really care about the pilot. He was just kind of the prox. He was just like the catalyst, I guess. He was like the reason why shit happened. I will say they threw a nice Clone Wars reference in for everybody who watched the series about, can't remember his name, but he comes in the later season. He's a rebel. He has a sister who ends up not making it through the war. So he takes over and fights the good fight in her name. And that was a cool reference. But again, like, it made you want to go look who he is because he's obviously important. But at the same time, it didn't fully matter. You got the sense that he was a rebel leader. Shit happened to him. Jin wasn't a big fan of his because of XYZ reasons. So that was okay. Like, it's okay not having everybody's backstory right away or ever. We don't, like, you can have a couple of cool characters that exist without a whole lot more going on in behind the scenes. That's fine. But again, Jin's backstory mattered because the whole story centered around her and her father's involvement with the Death Star. That made sense why we got more information about her and why things turned out the way it did for her. But it didn't make sense for us to learn more about Cassian. It didn't make sense for us to learn about the robot. It didn't make sense for us to learn about the Jedi priest, monk, whatever you want to call him. He was awesome, or his buddy, or the pilot, or anybody else. And they told a very good story because they gave us little bits and pieces of each of those because, that stuff does come up naturally in conversation as you progress through an adventure. But we didn't get an info dump. We didn't get any of that. It was just it was just enough. It was just perfect enough that we got interested in the characters, that we felt kind of a connection with them, but we didn't have the info dumping that they're doing so much of now. We don't need the info dumping. Everything just can progress naturally, but they don't want it to progress naturally. Oh my God. Sounds good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And yes, Cheyenne, it's much more, it's jankier writing than a Roger droid. Very true. You too, Wolf. But again, it was successful because it told a complete story with the proper amount of information. Yes, did some of it seem a little weak sauce? Yeah. Like calling the Death Star plans Stardust or Operation Stardust or some shit like that. Yes, it was a cute touch, but I felt a little heavy-handed. But and then having the design flaw in the Death Star be because he was forced to, it wasn't bad. Like, that made sense. That made more sense as to why it existed in the first place than just an oversight. But at the same time, you would think that somebody would have checked the plans. Just saying. If they had complete faith in this guy after they hunted him and his family down, that was that was a, whew, that was a violation of hubris I haven't seen ever. Well, I can't say that. But that was a huge violation of the sin of hubris, thinking that they had his complete and utter loyalty just because, what, he had been loyal before? Yeah. Also, Darth Vader making dad jokes was great. Careful not to choke on your aspirations. That was classic. That very much kind of hinted at the Anakin that we knew still in there, which, he's not there really anymore, but it was nice to see still little bit of him. It was cool. And the fight scene at the end of Rogue One was pretty freaking epic. Like, we were missing a lightsaber battle, and we got an entire lightsaber annihilation. And from probably one of the best master from one of the best lightsaber masters. It was good. The CGI was, you know, it was what it was. But I don't linger on that one for very long because it happened. Like, they were just learning that technology, so it probably won't age well, but whatever. It was very minimal, and the movie is amazing otherwise. And the fact that they were able to end it the way they wanted to, they didn't have to do any mental gymnastics to prove or show how these people survived the explosion was great. Apparently, the writers of Rogue One were not sure because this was the first Disney, like the first big Disney Star Wars movie that wasn't focused on the original. Um, and they're like, "Oh, are we going to be allowed to kill off the main characters? Because this has never been done before. This is also a Disney movie." And then like they had two scripts. They had the original where everybody died, and then they had the second one where they did a bunch of mental gymnastics to show how Jin and Cassian lived. And the execs at Disney just went, "We like the one where they all die better. You can go ahead and do that one. It makes more sense." And they're like, "Hey, thank God." It was great. Very tough on Ahsoka training her for anything. Ahsoka, yeah, yeah. It almost felt like Anakin was training her exactly for something like Order 66. She was one of the few to survive, and it was probably because of her training with him. Um, I will say, after watching Clone Wars and then watching Revenge of the Sith, it hurt a lot more to see their deaths. Um, I know when I first saw it, like, you're supposed to care because all these Jedi Masters, and you're shown that they're Jedi Masters, and you're supposed to care about Jedi Masters are dying. But it's like, you don't know their names, you don't know anything about them, so why should I care? Like, really care? Now I watch it and I'm like, I can't watch Plo Koon. I can't. That one hurts so badly because he was so good to these clones. He was so good. He treated them all as individuals. He loved all of them. They were like his children to him. And they then the order happened and he was betrayed and by the very people he loved so much, and that one hurts. Um, it's just you watch him and it's just devastating. You actually feel something if you watch Clone Wars and then watch that movie. You're just like, oh, my heart. I can't. It's too much. Um, I will say I did like the follow up they did after the series ended and they showed the clones all kind of freaking out about Order 66, about the chip thing, and they were basically lobotomizing each other. I don't say it like in the fact that they like permanently damaged their personalities or their brains or anything, but they had to go in and they had to explicitly trust whoever they were with to do this correctly and pull this chip out. And fucking poor fives, man, just poor fives. I know. It was a heart wrenching scene already. It was just gonna it like people have pointed out, Obi-Wan like, if Obi-Wan had been more like Qui-Gon in just the way that he didn't see so much in black and white, because Obi-Wan is very fastidious and he's very much by the books kind of guy. He even in the series acknowledges he doesn't like Anakin's way of doing things. He doesn't like bending the rules as much as Anakin does. Because Anakin is like, well, it's okay if these rules get bent because it saves these people. Yes, we may have broken, well, no, we may have done some questionable things without really breaking the law, but, it was all in the name of this. And Obi-Wan is very much not like that. He doesn't like that at all. So him seeing his, I guess, essentially disciple, his student, bending the rules in Anakin's mind, he's bending the rules, but to Obi-Wan, he broke the rules, and that shattered his trust in Anakin, and that he would turn his back on him was so. It seems so horrible because it is, but to Obi-Wan, it's like, I can't do anything. He's on this path. I'm not on that path. I can't bring him back to the light. I can't do anything for him now. It's done. It's gone. Whereas Qui-Gon has walked that line between the light and the dark. He's a gray Jedi, but he almost tipped into the dark. He very nearly went dark, but he was able to come back. But he couldn't come back fully to the light because he saw the nuance between. He saw that not everything is as light or as dark. There's the gray area. So Qui-Gon could have reasonably brought Anakin back, not maybe to the full light like Obi-Wan would want, but he could have brought him to the path of the in-between. He could have brought him to the gray and shown him, yes, what you're doing will have your desired effect, but you should also see that it's going to do this. So do you really want to continue on this path, or do you want to walk a different one and have similar results but with different actions? Qui-Gon would have been better suited for that scene. He would have been a better teacher, a better figure to bring Anakin back. But that's why they had to kill him, is because Qui-Gon is a reasonable human being who sees both sides of the argument very clearly and can come to a kind of middle ground, I guess, is the best way of putting it. So that's why they had it be Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan, for all his talk of only a Sith deals in absolutes, he said absolutely. He does really see things in black and white, and he does really disagree with a lot of Anakin's methods of bending the rules to suit the situation. So it made sense that he was the one that saw Anakin break and that saw him, and when he reached out, he just said no, because in Obi-Wan's mind, there is only one path. This is the path of the light. There is no way you can come back to the light after the dark. That's why when he was guiding Luke, he never really said there's still good in him. That was Padme. That was Luke. Luke believed he saw the good in his father. Luke realistically is a great Jedi as well, because he's walked both. He sees both, and they fucked it up dealing with Ben Solo. But he could have but it was reasonable for him to see the good in his father because he knew his father wasn't completely evil. His father was a man who made mistakes, and he was trying to make things better but didn't know how. He had lost his way, so he brought him back. And again, he didn't bring him back to the full light. He didn't bring him back. He brought him back from the dark, but he brought him into a middle ground, and that worked for him. They got rid of the Emperor, but in a way that cost Anakin his life. So it was a pretty middle ground solution. There are two separate ones. Darth keeps Ben and Ahsoka. Lightsabers, hinting that a little bit of Anakin still in. There's a lot of hints that Anakin is still in Vader. I saw and Hello Blaze. I saw a comic where it took place during Empire Strikes Back on the planet. Can't remember its name. Anyway, it was the one where they were all captured and they disassembled 3PO. They showed Darth Vader holding 3PO's head and kind of like putting his head against it and remembering. And he didn't want anything bad to happen to the droid. I remember in the comic he said, don't damage it further, or something like that, because he remembered. Anakin's still in there. It's not like Anakin was lost completely. Anakin's still in there. He fights against Vader a lot because he knows what he's doing is wrong, but he has no way of knowing how to come back from it. So he kind of lets what he sees as the dark side take over, but it's not. It's just he's so lost, he doesn't know what to do to fix anything, so he just kind of goes with what's going on because it's the safer option at the time. But you do see a lot of Anakin in the comics coming through 3PO. I mean, they say he picked um, clones to be his bodyguards and his soldiers, like the leftover clones, because Anakin was used to them. He knew how they work. He knew it was familiar. So, and he could be efficient with them. So that's why he led the remaining clones um, as his stormtroopers and such. There was a lot of Anakin. If you read the comics that came out, um, they do a really good job of just showing how human he really was. Really sad moment was he ended up on Naboo and he visited Padme's grave, and it it was so devastating because the speech, like his thoughts and everything, you could tell he wants to be the grieving husband. He completely blames himself for what happened. Um, but he can't come to Padme as her husband. He didn't come to Padme as her husband, and it's just really heartbreaking. It's a really good, like there's some really good comics, and they show so much of these characters that we don't see in the movies. It's such a damn shame. Um, I really should read more of the comics, but I can go on and on about Star Wars. I love Star Wars so much. It's so rich in lore and history, and you can do so much with it. Like one of my favorite games is Knights of the Old Republic with Revan. Um, that was probably one of my favorite games, and not just because it was Bioware. Bioware helped because they told an amazing story, but it was just like they got me to care about characters that had nothing to do with the original story of Star Wars. There was no Skywalker talk. There was nothing at all. There was no Yoda. Like there was a representative that was supposed to be the Yoda, but it wasn't like Yoda. There was no Obi-Wan. There was nothing that tied in the original because it happened thousands of years prior. But at the same time, you end up caring about the characters. You end up caring about your decisions and the outcomes and everything. Um, and they did such a good job of making you care about a story that wasn't the Star Wars you knew. That is how you know if a Star Wars game is truly successful is do you go out of this game caring about the characters, or are they forgettable? If you can come out and you can name a couple of the characters, or you can remember a big moment, it's like, or even small moments. Like for me, I remember a frustrating moment with those fucking pod races. Because of course you had to do pod races while you were on fucking Tatooine to with the fucking huts. Like, but I remember that a lot more than I've remembered any other Star Wars game. I remember the frustration of that game. Um, in that part of the game. I also remember the romance you have with Cade, which was really, or yeah, seems Cade, which was really good. And there was a fucking Dark Side Academy. There was a school for the dark side. I was like, okay, so we have the school for the light and the school for the dark. That's great. We have Hogwarts and Dumbstray. It was great. I thought that was phenomenal. And Kate's son is there, and you're dealing with this whiny ass teenager. And you're just like, oh my god, if I didn't want to romance your dad so badly, I would just abandon you here. And then you had Bastila, who kind of served as the Obi-Wan-esque character, very reasonable person, until you found out she likes to bend the rules too, and then she's not much of an Obi-Wan character at the end, depending on what you do. Well, I mean, yeah. depending on what you do, because she does go to the dark side at some point. Oh, and then you have the, oh god, and then you have the little Twilight girl, I can't remember her name, but she has the Wookiee companion, and they were really cool. They were great together, I really enjoyed them. Their dynamic was hilarious. And, of course, you have a sassy droid because I think it's a standard, um, amer just an absolute standard of any Star Wars anything, you have to have a sassy droid somewhere. This one was more murderous than sassy, but he had his moments. Um, and then you had this big hulking dude who liked guns a lot, and then you had another Jedi who was kind of middle of the road. He was supposed to be more gray, but he leaned a little violent too. There are a lot of Jedi in this game that leaned a little more violent than you would have thought. What was really cool is if you did the like to get your lightsaber, you had to do a quiz, and you could get different colors based on your answers. You could get blue, green, or yellow, or orange. It was yellow or orange, something like that. And again, it's based on how you answered, and it was to show your kind of role in the Jedi hierarchy. Like a blue one is a knight, and the green one is like a I can't remember, but it's supposed to be somebody who uses more thought than emotion, like a mediator or something. And then you have the yellow ones that are like the sentinels. They're like these big, pure, hardcore, like rule followers. I got green. I like being a mediator kind of person, so I got green. I made sure I got green. If y'all been chatting me, I'm not getting it, so I'm sorry. Mm, fair enough. So like a speakeasy kind of thing. Not saying it is a speakeasy, but it's like fashion like a speakeasy used to be. You had to know what exactly to look for to know if there was one there or not. A speakeasy back in the 1920s when alcohol was illegal like it was prohibition, so alcohol was illegal. Um, some establishments had what was called a speakeasy, which was a secret bar that you had to know a passcode to or a door knock or something. You basically it was super secret so that you wouldn't get raided by the police and arrested, but they were hidden behind paneling in the walls or painting or um, an obscure door that you wouldn't really see otherwise. Like it was something, it was hidden in plain sight basically, but you had to know how to get there and you had to know what it looked like. It's kind of like what you're talking about, where if you don't know the right panel to look at and see like the little um, knot hole that somebody's peeking out from behind, you're not gonna know it's there. Hmm. On the subject of Star Wars still and the games, I can't remember the name of it, but I remember the name of the main character. The main character is Kyle Katarn, and you played as him. He was a pilot who became a Jedi because for some reason pilots become Jedis all the time. And he went trying to save his co-pilot who got taken by, I guess you could call it a Sith, I don't know, but it was this evil lizard like alien. I don't even remember what his name was, but remember Kyle Katarn, and I remember the fight was really cool because it was a pain in the ass. It was a game my dad played. It was a PC game, and my sister and I would sit and watch him play it. We were like, "Oh, come on, you can do it, Dad." We watched the whole thing. Like we watched him play from the very beginning to the final fight. It was the coolest thing we'd ever seen. He hooked it up so when he was playing on his computer, it went to his TV, and we thought that was the shit. We thought that was the best thing. I mean, you can make it more obscure than that if you want to. Because if it looks like a trade tent without a lot of, if it looks like an active trade tent without a lot of active trading going on, that may draw some suspicion. But up to you. I mean, it's a really cool idea. I wish I could remember what that one was called. Let's see if I can find it. And I know Kyle Katarn does come into play in the he came into play in the books that came after the original trilogy. Is that it? I don't know. I'd have to see the pictures. Oh, he was a mercenary. Oh, I see. Oh yeah, I remember this. Okay, so I guess they were called the Jedi Knight series. Now I guess they bring Kyle Katarn to Star Wars Outlaws? Cool. Kinda dumb, but cool. Oh yeah, he did team up with Luke Skywalker. That was cool. I think it was that game or it was a different game. But yeah, this was the game. The Jedi Knight series. Clinky. Uh, pixels and all. Nice. That sounds awesome, Cheyenne. Cool. Yeah. feel like it's so much harder to do Star Wars video games that take place in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, just because one, we have Rogue One, which pretty much, you know, covers what happened. And I mean, what do you do? Because you can't change canon events. It's like that one where they were hunting down the Hollow Cube, I guess, with all the names of the Jedi kids. Okay. And then they do nothing with it. Sorry for spoilers, but I mean, it was kind of a lame game, so I don't know too many people who are gonna be wanting to play it. But it's like you go into the game, and once you find out what the plan is, you're like, but how's that gonna work when we know that doesn't happen in canon? How can this work? Well, because it doesn't work. Because um, what happens is they just did nothing with the information. They just are like, yeah, we went through all this trouble and you spent 100 hours playing this game, but we're just gonna take the Hollow Cube and toss it. And they're gonna make a sequel about, like, come on. This is why I'm gonna make a Star Wars game. You don't want to stick to the timeline that we have in the movies. We go further back, like way further back. Different characters, different galaxy, different problems. That's why they work. When we try to stick to the timeline, it doesn't work because there's only so much we can play with. There's only so much sand in the sandbox we can manipulate before we run into writing problems. Whereas with it's 1,000 years before in another part of the galaxy far, far away, it doesn't fucking matter because it's not going to impact anything of canon. So if anybody wants to write a Star Wars movie, a Star Wars game, Star Wars show, anything like that, don't put it in the timeline. Put it beyond. Put it, like I said, 1,000 years before the events of canon, in a different part of the galaxy with a different planet system. Everything. Just go away. We don't even need Jedi. Jedi are cool. They can be, other characters. They can be the main character. Just don't make it the same timeline as the movies. Don't. You'll run into so many writing problems. You'll write yourself into a corner before you even know how to stop. Just go to a different part of the galaxy and just call it good there. We don't need to fix anything. It's okay. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just go make up your own shit. It's fine. They did it with KOTOR. They did it with Jedi Knight. It's okay. KOTOR is a very good example of a very successful Star Wars game they made it an MMO about. Okay? They made it an MMO, and it was successful, and it was cool, and everybody liked it. We don't have to think too hard. We don't have to get too creative here. You just have to be willing to move away from the known IP and make your own. That's the fun of it. You get your chance to make your own characters, build up. You have some existing lore, like you have some existing things, but then you get to play around with it. You can manipulate. Like, well, we could do a whole thing where how the Mandalorians came to be. We don't have to do what they say in the current timeline because if we're 1,000 years prior, the current Mandalorians don't exist. We have entirely different types of Mandalorians. It's okay. I promise. It's okay that not everything is like the current IP. It's fine. It works. Just stop it. Just go do something original. Dude, that's funny. Alrighty, my lovely little Titans. Thank you so much for joining me. I had a great time chatting with all of you. I hope you guys had fun hanging out here. I really enjoyed the Star Wars talk. Get me going on Star Wars. I'll talk for another hour if you want. Probably not, but I can. Oh, Kyber Crystalline from the night. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yep, that would definitely, oh no, I'm not a Jedi at all kind of thing. But anyway, I hope you guys had a great night, a great week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye, everybody.